A lot of people think that social media is fake or toxic. I've met some of the greatest humans, some of my best friends.
It's not even that I want to be happy. I want to be at peace.
Yes.
Like internal peace is so important the older I get.
I wasn't needing people to feel sorry for me, and I wasn't needing people to be scared for me. It was just opening people up to a conversation that clearly wasn't understood or being had.
You can be this and. It's not an or. And I think we do that way too much in society. You have to be in a box and it's either black or white, right? Yeah. And really it's usually the gray.
Who you see in that camera is who you see when you look in the mirror. Yeah. And if you don't like what you see, guess what? That's what we see. And you can own it or change it. And even if you want to change it, you still have to own it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to The Laura Show. We are in New York City. I don't know if you can see outside here. That's not a fake backdrop. This is the real deal. We're in New York for a real estate conference called Inman, and me and my lovely guests are both speakers at this event. And I thought, if I'm going to make it all the way to New York, I'm going to hit up my girl Giselle, who I happen to have met on Clubhouse.
Yeah.
I can't even believe you're here in person, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but Giselle,
you got it perfect.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a couple of things, like this really is the real New York, because a lot of times for shows, they pretend it's New York, but it's actually Toronto.
Yeah, yes, 100%.
Like Suits?
Yes, we all know, 100%. I'm like, I know that's like down the street from where I live.
Yeah.
I so appreciate you taking the time because you literally just came off stage.
I just walked off just for you.
And then I was like, come here, come to the room. So we are in it. We are doing it. And I really wanted to have you on, because I've just been watching you from afar on Instagram and YouTube and all the places that you do content. And I've just always really admired what you were doing. I admire what your voice is, what you have to say. And I wanted to kind of chat with you and just get a little bit to know you a little bit better.
Let's chat. And
I actually exist.
I exist in the flesh, and how awesome that you and I made friends online, where if you weren't familiar with Clubhouse, RIP Clubhouse, but it was a social media app that had its time, and it brought a lot of people together during lockdown.
Yes.
And it was something where you couldn't have filters, you couldn't hit the record button a million times. You were just talking in real time and having real life conversations. And it was awesome because you could tell what someone was like in person. It was hard to hide.
Sense. It's funny because on Clubhouse, for anyone who doesn't know, you couldn't see the person. You just saw their little profile pic. And we actually have another guest in the room with us, met on Clubhouse. Our girl Candace is here as well. And I feel like that crew that we met in all those real estate rooms, like we got really, really close.
We got really, really close. We went deep, and where a lot of people think that social media is fake or toxic, I've met some of the greatest humans, some of my best friends on those apps, where if you put yourself out there in an authentic way, you really do feel like you know that person, and you find who your people are, and you also find who your people are not. But yes. I don't think I've maybe had one experience, but I really don't think I have, where I've been like, oh, you're not who I thought that you were. Like the ones who I feel like I get you, I know you, are like that in person, if not even better.
So
person.
Speaking about, well, I hope that's the feeling that you have after this today. But speaking about being authentic, tell us a little bit about you, your story, what you do for a living.
Yeah, I'm an online performance coach, and my background is in television. I did TV hosting for a very long time before then I moved into speaking and coaching, and I even worked in the advertising agency world for a minute. But that word authenticity, it's hard. Like I think people think, especially if you just start following me now, you think, oh my gosh, you're so comfortable, you're so confident, you're so real. It was not always that way. Like,
how did you start to become more real? Like, is it just trial and error, or was it like a conscious thought, like I gotta really like take the armor off? Because that's what we do, right? We put on this armor to protect ourselves. Childhood trauma, big T, little T, whatever you want to call it. Right? We all have it. We all have it. And then you start to portray yourself online, I almost think in the way that you want to be perceived.
Oh, yes.
And that's like the most dangerous thing, because that's when you already know to get out of that and to kind of now make up for it, to be more authentic, because that's the buzzword of the last couple of years.
I think it was the word of 2023, actually. Yeah, I think it was like Webster's word. We hear it all the time. And what I want to make sure people know is that it wasn't like I woke up one day and decided to start being authentic. I feel like, first of all, authenticity is an evolving piece for you. What feels authentic for you one day, later on might feel like, you know what, this isn't who I am anymore. That's a good sign. That means you're growing. That does not mean that you were fake before. I also think that we give social media a little too much credit, where we have to remind ourselves this is just a moment in time. Just like in real life, you might see somebody at a party who is smiling and who looks wonderful, dressed to the nines, and they might have been crying right beforehand, or they might go home to a situation that isn't that great. That does not mean that they were being fake. That might have been the best part of their day. Right. You can have the worst part of your day and the best part of your day, and they can both be exactly the same.
That's actually a really good point, right? Because I think so often people are nervous about kind of being a hypocrite, like, or being discovered, the real you. And it's not to say that you have to expose yourself online. You know, I've noticed with you, like, you are quite forthcoming, and I know that you're quite vulnerable. I feel like I've actually gained some strength from watching you. Like, okay, if she's going to share this and that, then maybe I can share some things about myself, my health journey, IVF, all the things. But it's not to say that that's right for everybody. Like, the great part here is you can choose how much you want to share.
Exactly.
But whatever you do choose to share, that's what should be authentic.
Right. Exactly. And again, it's just like the human experience. You will have instances where someone might say, hey, I want to talk to you about IVF. And you might be like, you know what? Not in a place to talk about it today, but maybe later. Like, that's just real life. You're allowed to set your own boundaries. There's personal and there's private. Personal is how you connect to people. Private is whatever you want it to be. There are plenty of moments that I don't share online. And there are instances where I overshare, but I'm doing it with the intention of connecting, not in the intention of clickbaiting or trying to get attention. If I want to get attention, it's for the right reasons or to try to educate in some way. And I want to make so clear that my journey has been 10 plus years. I've been creating and studying online video content for 15 years. And so it's been a journey of figuring out what that looks like and how I can be myself and who the hell I am. And like, what does that even mean?
If you look at your content and kind of consider it later, like, do you ever had a moment where you're like, I probably shouldn't have shared that, or that was too much, or where you got feedback from family, friends, and they're like, what are you doing? Anything like that?
I actually feel like that feeling is normal, especially if you're not used to sharing. So you're going to feel that way the first time that you share something. And I feel like over the last several years, it's been having little snowflake moments where it's just little pieces, where it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, where I've gotten more comfortable. So for example, I remember like 10 plus years ago, the first time I shared about how I actually struggle with anxiety and debilitating depression, which I'm an eternal optimist. Most people know me for my game face and smiling and having a really positive attitude, and that does exist.
Yeah.
And in that same breath, I was really, really struggling. And at the time, the conversation was actually around Robin Williams, where people just didn't understand, where this beacon of light and someone who's comedic, how he was struggling. And I was like, I understand. I get it. Like, I totally get it. And I remember in that moment, first of all, I felt like if I didn't share it, I was going to explode. I legitimately felt this calling on my heart to share.
Is that because like you felt like you were hiding something or keeping something a secret, or you were looking for help? Like, was it a cry for help in a way?
No, I don't think it was a cry for help. I actually felt like I wanted more people to understand that people were struggling in this kind of a way. I wasn't needing people to feel sorry for me, and I wasn't needing people to be scared for me. It was just opening people up to a conversation that clearly wasn't understood or being had. And I just felt this call on my heart that maybe I should share, and maybe by sharing this, somebody else will feel less alone. And I remember in that moment being both scared and courageous, and they both existed. And also, my mom actually called me and she was like, what are you doing? Like, what have you done? Because this was also 10 years ago. Like, talking about mental health, it was very taboo. She legitimately thought, no one's going to ever hire you. Like, this is going to live on your record forever. Who do you think you are? And my mom, by the way, loves me more than anything in the world. She unconditionally supports me. It's one of my competitive advantages. So she was doing this out of a place of love. And also she was doing that out of a place of, what are people going to think of me as a parent? How have I failed you?
I mean, like, I know 10 years ago, like you said, it was different, but like, think back to when she grew up, like no one was really talking.
Nobody.
About this kind of stuff.
No.
And, like, you wouldn't tell anybody this. Where now people like have these conversations with their employers, and like, this is a conversation that we can and should be having. Did you feel like when you did get it off your chest, I imagine there was an outcry of support. Was that helpful to you?
So that's the thing too, is that, again, remember, this is 10 plus years ago. Now, if I was to post that, I would probably have, I know that because I'll talk about it even more now. I posted a video of me crying on a day that was both the best and the worst. Again, just showing the normalcy of this. And I got hundreds of comments, especially from entrepreneurs that said, oh my gosh, I feel that way. I thought I was the only one. At the time, maybe 5 or 10 comments, a lot of people being concerned, misunderstanding it, but sometimes it takes the brave one to go first. And I was in a place where I think the saying is share like scars, not scabs or something, or share scars, not wounds.
Don't ask me about
so
saying.
yeah, whatever. But ultimately I was in, I think it's important for you to recognize, you mentioned it's kind of therapy in a way. And to some extent, like, yeah, it is. But there also is an extent where it's like, hold on a second. Is this a dangerous conversation where it's like, you should not be sharing this with the world. You need to actually go to a therapist and you need professional help.
Yes.
Or is this something that you've learned from or that we can experience and navigate with you? And we're in a place where we can be that collective. So I didn't get a lot of comments. I did get a lot of messages though. And that's also something that I've gotten over time where a lot of times, for example, people assume because we also have, there's a lot of unlearning that we have to do. People assume that because I'm a woman, that most of my followers are probably women. Mm-hmm. Or even I'll get oh, you're a great example for women. And I'm like, first of all, cute that you have that limiting belief that you think that a woman can only be a great example for a woman. And if you want to cater to female audiences, that's fine. And that's great. And that's wonderful. We love you.
Yeah.
And also, I would have over all of these different years where I was talking about body issues and my weight and insecurities and anxiety and depression. I had so many men in my DMs not sliding in, but saying, thank you for that.
So
I read that.
I work with a lot of male real estate agents, and it's once you get in the room and they feel comfortable to share. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised because it's not part of the conversation as much, but now I'm kind of like, okay, like men are struggling too. This isn't just a conversation for women. Body image is not just a conversation for women. These are all things that people from all walks of life face. And I like what you said, because you're saying it's essentially an and, right? Mm-hmm. Like everything's an and. You can be this and. It's not an or. And I think we do that way too much in society, that you have to be in a box and it's either black or white, right? And really it's usually the gray. Yeah. Talk to me a little, you mentioned being courageous. You've moved to New York City. Yeah. You're not from here. You're from Minnesota. Tell me about that experience moving, because that, I think you need some big kahunas to pick up and come to like the most overwhelming, intimidating city on the planet. Tell me about that. I mean, I lived in LA for almost 10 years, so it's not that big of a jump. Right. But it was absolutely something that for me, I mean, we went through the pandemic, we were in lockdown, and I think a lot of us had these moments of, if not now, when? Like, or what if I never get the chance to fill in the blank? Or maybe you just had a lot of dreams come to light that you realized that you'd maybe put on the back burner, or you'd completely forgotten about, or you'd lost a piece of your identity. And so it was ultimately something that it was unfinished business, where 5 years previously I'd had it on my heart and my dream to go and do it. And I believe that I am an expert manifester. Okay. Like I really, really do. And so I put it out into the universe of, all right, what would it look like? And I thought about, what would my apartment look like? What would my living situation look like? Because 5 years ago, when I wanted to move to New York, the whole universe was like conspired against me. It felt like I was willing to do whatever it took to make it work. And I felt like door just kept slamming and slamming and slamming, where I was like, I'll have 5 roommates. I'll live in Jersey City, like whatever it takes. And I was also in a relationship. I was moving for a boy. And I felt like the universe was like, no, we're closing this door. There's a window over there that you can exit out of, but this door is closed. And I'm surprised that wasn't to you like, this is my son, maybe I shouldn't do this. And you kept... And I kept on pushing, and I wouldn't. But then 5 years later, I was like, let's just try again. I'm feeling this again. And the odds were completely stacked against me. There were all these videos on TikTok that had people lining up around apartments. The market in Minneapolis was not great, and I would have had to have either put my condo up for rent or for sale. And I also at that point had standards, where before I was like, I'll have 5 roommates, I'll live in the city. And I was like, you're 5 years older now. I gotta live in the city. Yes. I need my own place. I want a view. I want a doorman. I want an elevator. I like all these different things. So the odds were stacked up, but I was like, I'm gonna journal it. I'm gonna write it down. I'm gonna think about it. And if it's meant to be, I believe it'll happen. And that night I found my apartment. And within a week, I had an offer on my condo before it even went on the market. Did you tell anybody about this dream?
I had told a few people here and there, but
Anyone
ultimately
kind of
it was
the,
like,
don't do it. Like, you know what I mean?
oh, of
Sometimes
course.
when you leave people, like you leave kind of people behind, particularly when you like move cities, states, you're leaving people behind. Was anyone like crab in the bucket, holding you back?
Of course.
Yeah.
You know, I'm obsessed with my parents. My parents are basically my kids. Like that's the season of life that we're in. I don't have kids. They're basically my kids. I bring them everywhere that I can. And I feel like I even want to like go back to that place of, listen, all of my confidence that has been built, all of my, you know, sharing of my insecurities, my authenticity that's been built, it's been a million little pieces over the last few years where I recognized, hey, you know what? Sometimes your family doesn't always know better. Sometimes the call on your heart is greater. Sometimes staying in something safe makes you feel like you're going to suffocate. It doesn't feel like home. It doesn't feel warm. And so over time, I've gathered trust in that. And I also feel like you mentioned the and thing. I like to say confidence is not the absence of insecurity. It's the embracement of it. I have insecurities all the time. This morning, as I'm driving over here, like every single time I'm going to give a keynote, and you can even ask Candace, who stayed at my place, I will set my alarm an hour earlier than when I'm actually supposed to wake up. And I'll tell myself I'm going to wake up at that time. What ends up happening is I have anxiety that's so bad that I just like sit in my bed and just want to disappear into the couch and be a potato. And I will have moments throughout the day where I'm like, Giselle, this is it. This is where you fuck it up. This is where you blow it. This is where you forget what you're going to say. Like no one cares. And also, fuck yeah, this is what you were made to do. You're stepping into this.
You're having
like, let's
both
dance.
Of conversations.
Of course.
It's like the devil and the angel on the shoulder, right? Simultaneously, at the same time, you're like suffering from immense anxiety. Because people fear stage talking more than death.
Yes.
Like when people say their number one fear, it's death is not first. It's like talking on stage.
Yes.
How do you get over that? Like, how do you tell the devil, like, shut up, I'm going and doing this anyways?
Yeah.
How do you not let it take over?
The best thing that I have done over the years is, rather than avoiding it or telling it to is facing it and going through it. One of the best things that I did for me, I'm not a doctor, this is my own personal experience, but I was not on any medications, and I'm still not. And I also stopped drinking for a whole year. I know people do sober January, you give it up for 30 days. But let me tell you, when you get through wedding season and like baby shower season without alcohol, like you learn some things about yourself.
Like what?
So for example, like I didn't realize that when I would drink, it would actually sometimes numb those voices or mute those voices.
I think that's why so many people do.
Right. And like you think, because you hear the phrase liquid courage of, oh, no, this is making me more confident. It's actually making you more insecure because you are ignoring your actual thoughts. And then also it is a depressant. So you're going to wake up the next day feeling a little sad. Like scientifically, it's not just me saying that. Like you're probably, it's going to give you, you're going to have anxiety.
Yeah.
And so it forced me to, for example, listen to those voices that maybe said, oh my gosh, you're going to die alone, or, oh my gosh, no one likes you, or just all the voices that I think all of us hear. I don't know, maybe I'm not normal, but maybe I hear more of them than usual.
I don't know if I'm normal.
Yeah, even if I'm not, that's fine. Yeah. If not, but again, they both exist. And so sometimes I would listen to those voices, and that's when I would be able to say, oh, that's not true. Or like, don't say, I could actually kind of talk back to that and say, that's not true. Whereas before, the way that it would show up is I couldn't hear the voice, but I would have full body resistance. I would have that need to go to the bar or to drink or to go to the bathroom and take a peopling break. Versus when I actually listened and I was able to recognize, oh, you're just like a toddler having a tantrum for a minute. So we'll let you exist, get it all out. And then
so you just give it the permission. I love that because so often we fight things, right?
Yeah.
And I always say when people say like, Laura, like you want to be happy, right? And I say, it's not even that I want to be happy. I want to be at peace.
Yes.
Like internal peace is so important. The older I get, the more I'm like, I just want, like my goal for 2024, I'm like, I just need peace, like inner peace. And I think that's what it is. It's understanding that you're going to have good days and bad days, but not letting those bad days like build up. Because what would happen is you have the bad day or the bad moment, and then you speak badly to yourself about it. And then that only like makes it last longer versus what you're saying is just say, okay, we're having a moment.
Yeah.
Because we are just toddlers inside.
Yeah.
And it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then we move on.
Yeah. And I also recognize too, I'm like, wow, I'm actually lacking some serious social skills because I legitimately didn't know how to exit a conversation. My exit was always, I'm going to go to the bar. Does anybody want a drink?
Right.
And that's fine.
Right.
But when you don't have that as a crutch, you're forced to find other tools. Or I would find myself projecting my feelings on situations, which would also intensify with alcohol. So for example, oh my gosh, it's so awkward, or like nobody's talking. Now I've had to figure out tools of like introducing myself, because even though I'm on a stage, I'm so much more of an introvert than people realize. Like
A lot
that's
of people who are really great on stage, like actors and
it's
and
not
performers.
natural for me. And now I am that person where it's okay, Giselle, you really want someone to come say hi to you first and introduce yourself. I'm now becoming that person who will give a hug or go for, with that person, introducing myself, or go to parties alone. That's another thing that I began doing, that thing that made me feel really uncomfortable and leaning into it. And that's what's made me more confident, because I realized, oh my gosh, Giselle, that thing that you were so afraid of, it's actually not that scary. And a lot of times we cancel ourselves out before even giving ourselves the chance.
Yeah, it's funny with confidence, right? People want the confidence first to start a podcast, to go on stage, to do a quick little video for social media. They're like, when I'm more confident, when I lose weight, when I get the tools. And it's like, no, you kind of have to go through it. You'll learn the tools as you go. That creates confidence, and then the cycle continues, right? Because you put yourself in another situation,
or you make confidence in the mistakes. How many times have you screwed up on video, or you had a technical difficulty, or the audio didn't get captured in the way that you wanted, or like
and now I almost embrace it. Like the mistakes are actually more interesting,
right?
Than when you like a couple of years ago, we came to New York City to do a podcast with Ryan Serhant, and I was telling this story last night actually. And the flight was canceled. All flights into New York City just got canceled because there was like a lightning storm in the summer.
Oh, no.
And so Jazz and I get on like a Greyhound bus. We drive to Buffalo, get on a Greyhound bus, overnight bus.
Stop.
And Jazz, being the optimist that he is, was like, this is such a great story. I was like, fuck you. This is not a great story. We're going to miss our podcast with Ryan. We're on a fucking Greyhound bus. Like, I was so pissed. But now in hindsight.
Right. You survived.
I'm like, and that story is so amazing. Like, we got here yesterday. No hiccups. I'm like, there's no story there, right?
Yeah.
The stories are the failures and the bad things that happen, because that's what makes life interesting.
Exactly.
I want to talk to you quickly before we wrap up about your stage talk today.
Yeah.
I unfortunately, sadly, didn't get a chance to go in there. And
so rude. Oh my God.
I had to set up this lovely podcasting studio. Talk to me. What was your talk about today?
I mean, ultimately, I talked about how right now we as humans are the most connected that we've ever been, and yet we've never felt more disconnected. And I really believe that reasons for that is because the way that we show up, especially digitally, it's because we don't want to be ourselves. We don't want people to see who we are. We think that we're supposed to be somebody else, or we think that we're supposed to be filtered or only show the highlight reel, or that it's this toxic place. We've again just ruled ourselves out before even giving us the chance. And so what I really talked about is how the ones who are going to win in the universe of AI, it's not the ones who know how to write all the prompts, although that's part of it. It's the people who know their voices well enough to then feed the proper prompts and to also modify and customize as needed, knowing full well that they can't just copy and paste what the output is. And so I just talked about the different ways that you need to put your face forward, and people need to hear in the same way that you and I were able to get to know each other and feel like we were already trustworthy friends before we met. It's giving people that, because you'll have people who come to the conferences or listen to the podcasts, and they think that by simply consuming that session or that episode, that it's going to be the magic pill and solve all of their problems.
Yes.
And even before I went on, there was this speaker who gave ad prompts for ChatGPT. And that's great. Like, I'm sure the ad prompt is fantastic. But most of the people in that room are not ready to run ads, quite frankly.
Yes.
Like, you can't run ads if your marketing, which is what you put out with $0, is not aligned with who you are in real life. And if you don't have...
Do you think it's because people are, like, they're not in tune with themselves?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's we have to do a lot of that unlearning. And a lot of my unlearning happened when I was in shit, or when I felt stuck, or when I gained the weight. Like you mentioned that the confidence of when I lose the weight. For me, I had the most confidence when I had an autoimmune disease. My skin was covered in hives, and I put on like 40 pounds in a very short period of time. And I had to simply own that. And I could hide. hide until I lost the weight. But then who knows, like, would that be a year or 2 or 3, or it's taken me 4 years to finally lose the weight. But am I going to hide for that long until I come back as perfect, or am I going to start showing up? Yeah. And I was like, I have no choice. Like and also my clients are seeing me every single day. They can then see if I'm posting a skinny photo and if I look totally different. And I feel like, social media, it's a mirror for us. Like, you can't run away from that. Like, that who you see in that camera is who you see when you look in the mirror. Yeah. And if you don't like what you see, guess what? That's what we see. And you can own it or change it. And even if you want to change it, you still have to own it. And so that's also where, again, like, I did not become confident because of what happened when everything went right. It's actually what I had to learn about myself when things were completely out of my control, and creating my own form of happiness and joy and optimism in total uncertainty.
Oh my goodness. You're so mature. Like, holy shit, I'm like, when I grow up, I'm gonna be like Giselle. Even though
I think I'm older than you.
No, I'm much older.
No.
I love you.
I love you.
So appreciate you coming and sharing all this. Talk to me. Talk to the audience. I'm sure people are looking at you and they're like, look at this girl. She's got it all figured out. And I know you said I don't have it figured out. What's next? What's the next thing for you? What's the thing that you're now gonna push forward, that you're gonna be fearful of again? And like, you got the stage talks nailed down. You're traveling the country.
Yeah.
You're doing all these things.
Yeah.
What are you up to? What's next?
There's a couple of different things. And I feel like sometimes the most average things are actually scary to other people. But for me, it's just, this is what we're doing. So one of the things that I'm doing is, I sold my condo when I moved here, and I'm not renewing my lease at the end of this month. And I don't know that I'm going to, like, people are like, where are you going to go next?
A couple days?
In a couple months. My lease is up. Yeah.
In a couple months.
Yeah.
Okay.
And people are like, where are you going to go next? I'm like, I don't know. I don't really know. And I think I honestly might live a little bit of this nomad life that a lot of people assume, oh, you must be lost or confused. And I'm like, I've never been more sure. And I feel so home wherever I am. And, I have family and families of friends in different places. And I also am in this place that I know is not typical for everyone, but I have the means, especially with the way that I travel for work, that I can stay at a bunch of different places, and I've got the points, and I'm going to figure out what that looks like, because in any other situation, if I had multiple homes in different places, that would be luxury.
That would be, but also stressful.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, like, I'm looking forward to that, and speaking to more groups in person, connecting more in person. And all of that is amounting to me finally writing the book. And putting on live events, two of the things that I want more than anything, but are also the biggest fears that I have.
Pen to paper yet?
Yes.
For the book?
Yeah.
I feel like that first act of getting started is the hardest part.
Yeah.
It's like, who am I to, I can hear my own voice.
Of course.
I don't have a book, but it's like, who am I to write a book? Right?
Yes.
That's the first thing that enters my mind. What made you actually put the pen down, or more like this?
Well, I feel like a lot of my stories on stage and Instagram captions are their own little mini manuscripts on their own. But it was a feeling and knowingness, because I know I've been wanting to do it for a very long time. I've had so many people that say, you should do it, you should do it, you should do it. And for me, I feel like I finally got into this headspace where before it was, I want to do it to be taken seriously, or I want to do it to be on a bestsellers list, or I want to do it to be paid more to have the credibility. Now it's, I want to do this because I think it could help someone, not million, one person. If I'm in a room and 10 people buy my book, great. Like, I'm in that space of I simply want to be able to provide value in an extended way. And I also want to do it in my own way, where I feel like there might be an audio visual element to it.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, you already have a fan.
Great.
I'll buy a copy of whatever it is that we're putting
Let's go.
Because you have helped me from afar.
You've helped me from afar.
Well,
I've been influenced.
I too have been influenced. And, I mean, my goodness. So we have the same jacket. I was kind of hopeful that maybe both of us would bring our jackets.
I know we should have. Maybe tomorrow.
We ended up dressing similarly anyway.
I know.
I love you.
I love you.
And thank you so much for being here. And if you are ever in Toronto, you need to hit us up.
I know.
I mean, I'm not gonna compete with this really, but Toronto's a pretty cool place.
I mean, now if I'm living the life, I can just make a
nomad
plan
life
to
is
go.
right
I got to
there.
redo my passport though. I keep forgetting.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
that unfortunately we
Yeah.
have to do. But again, thank you so much
Thank
for being here.
you.
Much appreciated.
Adore you.
Guys, we'll see you next.